The silence of deep space shattered like glass. Captain Sarah Chen jerked awake in her command chair as alarms screamed through the bridge of the UES Prometheus. Red warning lights bathed everything in an urgent crimson glow. Outside the massive viewport, stars that had been still for 3 years suddenly streaked past like silver tears. "Report," Sarah barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, barely 25 but already gray from the stress of Deep Space Command, spun from his console. "Captain, we're getting massive gravitational readings. Something big just dropped out of hyperspace. Really big." Sarah's blood turned to ice. The Prometheus was humanity's first Titan-class exploration vessel. 5 kilometers of cutting-edge technology and home to 12,000 souls. They were supposed to be alone out here, 47 light-years from Earth in a system that every scan had declared lifeless. "How big, Lieutenant?" Webb's hands trembled as he checked his readings again. 15 kilometers long, Captain. Maybe more. It's unlike anything in our databases." The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. 15 kilometers. That made their ship look like a child's toy in comparison. Commander Elena Vasquez, Sarah's second-in-command, stepped forward. Her dark eyes held the same fear Sarah felt gnawing at her gut. "Orders, Captain." Before Sarah could respond, the main screen flickered to life. The image that appeared made every person on the bridge take a step back. It was a ship, but not like any human design, where the Prometheus was sleek and functional. This vessel looked organic, like a massive sea creature that had learned to swim through space instead of water. Its hull seemed to pulse with bioluminescent patterns that shifted and flowed like living veins. Tendrils of energy danced along its surface, and at its front, what looked disturbingly like an eye the size of a city block slowly opened. "My God," whispered Dr. James Park, the ship's chief xenobiologist. He had rushed to the bridge when the alarm sounded, still wearing his lab coat over rumpled pajamas. "It's beautiful and terrifying." The alien ship held position, neither advancing nor retreating. It simply watched. Sarah felt the weight of 12,000 lives pressing down on her shoulders. Every decision she made in the next few minutes could determine whether humanity's first contact with alien intelligence would be remembered as a moment of wonder or as the beginning of their extinction. "Captain," Webb called out, his voice tight with fear. "I'm detecting energy buildups along the alien vessel's hull. Whatever they're doing, it's big." The organic ship's bioluminescent patterns began to pulse faster, like a heartbeat racing with excitement, or preparing for attack. What happened next would change the course of human history forever. Chapter 2. First words. The waiting stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Captain Chen stood rigid at the center of the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back to hide their trembling. Around her, the crew worked with desperate efficiency, their faces lit by the glow of their consoles and the alien ship's hypnotic light patterns. "Still no response to our standard first contact protocols," reported Communications Officer Lisa Chung. She had been broadcasting the mathematical sequences and basic pictographs that Earth's best minds had designed for exactly this moment. "They're definitely scanning us, though, I can feel it." Sarah knew what she meant. There was something in the air itself, a subtle vibration that seemed to touch not just their instruments but their minds. Several crew members had reported strange dreams during their sleep cycles, filled with images of vast oceans and alien skies. "Captain!" Webb's voice cracked with excitement. The energy readings just spiked. "Something's happening." On the main screen, the alien vessel's eye-like structure began to glow brighter. The bioluminescent veins across its hull pulsed in a rhythm that almost seemed like language. Dr. Park leaned forward, his scientific mind racing. "It's a pattern. Look at the sequence. 3 long pulses, 2 short, 1 long. It's repeating." "Could be a greeting," Commander Vasquez suggested. "Or a warning." Before anyone could respond, the bridge's main communications array crackled to life. What came through wasn't sound in any traditional sense, but somehow they all understood it, felt it in their bones, in their very DNA. Small swimmers in the dark ocean, Why do you drift so far from your spawning grounds? The voice was vast and ancient, like the whisper of continental drift or the song of whales in the deepest trenches. It spoke not to their ears, but directly to their minds, carrying with it images of endless space as a cosmic sea, of planets as islands of life in an infinite blue. Sarah found her voice first. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Prometheus. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship among the stars. The response came faster this time, and with it a wave of something like amusement. Peace? Friendship? Such young concepts from such young swimmers. We are the Leviathan Collective. We have sailed these currents since your star was merely a whisper of gas and dust. The alien ship, the Leviathan, drifted closer. As it approached, the Prometheus's sensors began picking up impossible readings. The vessel wasn't just large, it was old. Older than human civilization, older than humanity itself. Captain? Dr. Park whispered, his face pale as he studied the incoming data. The carbon dating on their hull materials. It's showing readings of over 50,000 years. This ship is older than recorded human history. We sense your fear, young ones. It is natural. You have never met the deep swimmers before. Your species clings to solid ground, to the shallows of existence. But space is an ocean, and we are its greatest navigators. Images flooded their minds. Vast fleets of bioships sailing between stars, entire civilizations that lived their entire lives in the void between worlds, creatures of impossible beauty, and intelligence that had evolved not on planets but in the cosmos itself. Sarah felt her worldview cracking and reforming. Everything humanity thought they knew about life, about civilization, about their place in the universe, it was all wrong. They weren't explorers venturing into the unknown. They were children taking their first tentative steps into a sea that ancient powers had sailed for millennia. What do you want from us? She asked, proud that her voice remained steady. The alien's response came with a feeling of vast patience, like a parent watching a child take its first steps. Want? We want nothing, small swimmer. But we are curious. Your species burns bright and brief like stellar flares. Most young races destroy themselves before they learn to swim properly. Yet you have built this interesting vessel. You show promise. The Leviathan's massive eye turned to focus directly on the Prometheus's bridge. Sarah felt exposed, as if every thought and memory were being gently examined. Tell us, Captain Sarah Chen, are your people ready to learn that they are not alone in the deep? Are they prepared to discover that the ocean of stars is already claimed? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Whatever Sarah answered next would determine not just the fate of her ship, but possibly the entire human race. Behind her, she could hear the sharp intake of breath from her crew. They all understood the implication. Humanity had always assumed they would be the ones to claim the stars. But what if they were too late? What if ancient powers had already divided up the galaxy among themselves? The alien ship waited, patient, as the void itself, for humanity's answer. Chapter 3. The Test of Waters. The weight of the alien's question pressed down on the bridge like the crushing depths of an ocean trench. Captain Chen felt 12,000 lives hanging in the balance of her next words. One wrong syllable could doom their species to eternal imprisonment in their own solar system, or worse. We are ready to learn, Sarah said finally, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had guided humanity's greatest ship through 3 years of deep space. But we won't be intimidated or conquered. If the stars are already claimed, then we'll earn our place among them. The Leviathan's bioluminescent patterns shifted to what almost looked like surprise. For a moment, the vast alien intelligence seemed to consider her words. Interesting. Most young species either cower in fear or rage with foolish aggression. You show wisdom. Perhaps your kind truly is different. Commander Vasquez stepped closer to Sarah's side. Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures building throughout their ship. Whatever they're planning, she never finished the sentence. Space around the Prometheus suddenly exploded into activity. From hidden alcoves along the Leviathan's hull, dozens of smaller craft emerged. Each one was still larger than humanity's most advanced fighters, their bioluminescent forms undulating through space like living things. They weren't attacking, they were dancing. The smaller ships wove around the Prometheus in complex patterns, their movements synchronized like a school of fish or a flock of birds. As they danced, they sang, not with sound but with harmonies that resonated directly in the minds of everyone aboard the human ship. Dr. Park was frantically taking readings, his excitement overcoming his fear. "Captain, the energy patterns, they're generating... It's incredible. They're actually manipulating space-time on a localized level. The physics involved. This is our greeting, young swimmers. We celebrate your arrival in the deep waters. But celebration is not the same as acceptance. You must prove you can swim before we allow you to enter our currents." One of the dancing bioships broke formation and approached the Prometheus directly. As it drew near, its purpose became clear. It was extending what looked like a docking tube, but one made of flowing energy rather than solid matter. "Send one of your kind to swim with us. Let them experience the true nature of the deep. If they survive the journey and return changed, we will know your species is worthy of the greater ocean." Sarah felt her heart race. A test, of course there would be a test, but what kind of test could these ancient beings have in mind? And who would she send? "I'll go," Dr. Park said immediately, stepping forward. "As xenobiologist, I'm the most qualified to—" "No." The voice came from behind them. Everyone turned to see Chief Engineer Maya Patel striding onto the bridge. Her usual coveralls were replaced by a clean uniform, and her dark hair was tied back with military precision. "With respect, Doctor, this isn't about biology. It's about understanding their technology, their capabilities. I should be the one." "Like hell," Commander Vasquez interjected. "I'm not sending civilians into an unknown alien vessel. If anyone goes, it should be me." The debate was interrupted by the alien's mental voice, now tinged with what sounded like approval. "You care for each other. This too shows promise. But the choice is not yours to make. We have been observing your ship, learning your patterns. There is one among you whose mind resonates with the deep currents, one who dreams of vast spaces and distant shores even while sleeping among metal and circuits." All eyes turned to Lieutenant Webb. The young navigation officer looked like he'd been struck by lightning. "Me?" he whispered. "But I'm nobody special. I just plot courses and monitor sensors." "You are the one who sees patterns where others see chaos, who finds beauty in the mathematics of orbital mechanics and the poetry of stellar cartography. Your mind already swims in our waters, young navigator. You simply do not know it yet." Sarah studied Webb's face. She could see the terror there, but underneath it something else, a hunger she recognized. The same drive that had pushed humanity to build the Prometheus and venture into the unknown. "Lieutenant," she said quietly, "I won't order you to do this. But if you volunteer—" Webb straightened, and for a moment he looked far older than his 25 years. "I volunteer, Captain. If this is humanity's chance to join the galactic community, someone has to take the risk." The energy tube from the alien ship extended toward the Prometheus's airlock. As it connected, readings throughout the ship went wild. The bioship wasn't just docking, it was interfacing directly with their computer, systems learning their technology even as it prepared to share its own. "The test begins now," the Leviathan announced. "Your navigator will journey with our guide to a place between spaces, where the true nature of the cosmic ocean becomes clear. If his mind can adapt to what he sees there, if he can return with new understanding, then perhaps your species is ready for what comes next." Sarah grabbed Webb's arm as he headed toward the airlock. "Marcus, you don't have to do this. We can find another way." The lieutenant smiled, and in that smile was a glimpse of the explorer he truly was. "Captain, I've spent my whole life dreaming of moments like this. Besides," he added with a nervous laugh, "someone has to be humanity's first real ambassador to the stars." As Webb stepped into the energy tube, the bioship's patterns pulsed brighter. Space around both vessels began to shimmer and warp. Whatever was about to happen, Sarah realized, would change everything. The question was, would any of them survive to see the result? December Chapter 4. Between the currents, Lieutenant Webb felt his consciousness scatter and reform 1,000 times in the space between heartbeats. The bioship's interior defied every principle of physics he'd ever learned. There were no walls, no floors, no ceiling, just a flowing space that seemed to exist in more dimensions than human minds were designed to comprehend. Bioluminescent pathways twisted through what might have been air or might have been liquid, or might have been something else entirely. His guide materialized from the shifting patterns around him. It was humanoid in the loosest sense, tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to be made of living starlight. When it moved, trails of cosmic dust followed in its wake. Do not try to understand with your limited senses. The being communicated, its thoughts feeling like cool water flowing through Webb's mind. Experience. Learn. Become. They were moving. Now, though, Webb couldn't tell if they were traveling through space or if space was flowing around them. The bioship had become transparent, and he could see the Prometheus growing smaller behind them, his home and colleagues shrinking to a distant speck of metal and hope. Your species builds shells around themselves, his guide observed. Metal, boxes to hide from the infinite. We build ourselves to embrace it. As they traveled, Webb began to understand. The bioships weren't just vessels. They were living beings, each one a fusion of technology and biology that had evolved over thousands of years. The Leviathan Collective wasn't a fleet of ships, but a community of living entities that had chosen the void as their home. Look deeper, the guide instructed. See the currents. Webb's perception shifted, and suddenly he could see them, vast, rivers of energy flowing between the stars. Invisible highways that connected distant galaxies like blood vessels in some cosmic body. Along these currents he glimpsed other ships, other civilizations, all swimming through the sea of space with practiced ease. How many? He whispered, his voice sounding strange in the flowing atmosphere of the bioship. Countless. Your species knows only the shallow tide pools at the edge of one small island. The deep ocean teems with life beyond your imagination. They were approaching something massive, a structure that made even the Leviathan look small. It was part space station, part living organism, part something that had no name in any human language. Countless bioships docked with it like cells joining a larger organism. The Nexus, his guide explained, where the deepest currents meet, where the ancient swimmers gather to share knowledge and chart new courses through the infinite. As they drew closer, Webb could see other beings moving through the structure's fluid passages. Some were similar to his guide, but others were so alien that his mind struggled to process them. Creatures of living crystal that sang in harmonies that created new matter. Beings of pure energy that flickered between dimensions. Entities so vast they existed across multiple star systems simultaneously. This is what awaits us? Webb asked, wonder and terror warring in his voice. If we pass your test. This is what awaits those who learn to swim properly. But first, you must prove your species capable of the deep waters. The test is not what you think, young navigator. It is not about courage or intelligence or strength. They had entered the Nexus now, and Webb felt the attention of countless alien minds turning toward him. Most regarded him with curiosity, like scientists examining a new species of deep-sea fish. But some radiated hostility that made his skin crawl. Many here believe young species should be left to develop on their own, his guide continued, or eliminated before they can disrupt the ancient currents. Your kind has a reputation for aggressive expansion. Webb thought of Earth's history, the wars, the colonization, the countless times humanity had met something different and tried to conquer or destroy it. He felt shame burn in his chest. We're not all like that, he said quietly. We can learn. We can change. Perhaps. That is what we are here to determine. They had reached the center of the Nexus, a vast chamber where the greatest of the ancient Swimmers gathered. Webb found himself floating before beings so old and powerful that their very presence warped reality around them. One resembled a living nebula, its thoughts vast and slow like the formation of solar systems. Another appeared to be made of crystallized time itself, its faceted surface showing glimpses of past and future. And at the center, something that might have been the first intelligence to ever evolve in open space, a being of such age and wisdom that looking at it felt like staring into the birth of consciousness itself. The test, this ancient presence communicated, its thoughts carrying the weight of eons. Young swimmer, your species stands at a crossroads. You can remain in the shallows, fighting over the scraps of a few systems, eventually destroying yourselves as so many have before. Or you can join the deep currents and help us face what comes from beyond the known ocean. Images flooded Webb's mind, vast dark shapes moving between galaxies, a hunger that devoured entire clusters of stars, something that made even these ancient beings tremble with fear. The devourers return. The presence continued. They sleep for millions of years, then wake to feed on the light of civilizations. The last time they came, we lost entire spiral arms of the galaxy. They approach again, and we will need every mind, every species capable of swimming the deep currents to have any hope of survival. Webb felt the weight of cosmic history pressing down on him. Humanity wasn't being tested for membership in some Galactic club. They were being evaluated as potential soldiers in a war that spanned eons. What do you need from us? He asked. Innovation. Chaos. The ability to think in ways that ancient minds have forgotten. Your species may be young and violent, but you are also unpredictable. In the coming war, that may be exactly what we need. The test, Webb realized, wasn't about proving humanity was peaceful or wise or worthy. It was about proving they could be useful. The thought should have been insulting, but instead, it filled him with hope. Humanity could be useful. They were experts at fighting impossible odds and finding solutions where none should exist. If you accept our offer, the ancient presence continued, your species will be given access to the shallow currents, trade routes, technology, contact, with younger civilizations like yourselves. In return, you will prepare for the war to come. You will learn to swim in deeper and more dangerous waters than you can imagine. And if we refuse, the presence radiated something like sadness. Then you will remain isolated until the devourers wake. And when that happens, your small corner of the galaxy will be consumed along with everything else. Webb closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his species' future pressing down on his shoulders. When he opened them again, he looked directly at the ancient being that had witnessed the birth and death of countless civilizations. We accept, he said. Humanity will join your fight. The response was immediate. Not words, but a feeling of vast relief flowing through the assembled minds of the Nexus. They had been desperate, Webb realized. Despite all their power and ancient wisdom, they had been afraid. And they saw in humanity's chaotic, violent, innovative nature something that might tip the balance when the darkness returned. Then swim well, young navigator, his guide said, as the bioship began to carry him back toward the Prometheus. Your real education begins now. As they traveled back through the cosmic currents, Webb felt his mind expanding to accommodate everything he'd learned. He was no longer just a human navigation officer. He was humanity's first student in the AOI, greatest university in the galaxy, the deep ocean of space itself. But even as excitement filled him, a cold dread settled in his stomach. The devourers were coming, and despite everything he'd seen, despite all the power of the ancient civilizations, he wasn't sure anyone was ready for what was about to wake up in the darkness between the stars. The real test was yet to come. Epilogue. New current 6 months after first contact, the Prometheus had become something unprecedented in human history, a bridge between worlds. Captain Chen stood in the ship's newly constructed diplomatic wing, watching as human engineers worked alongside bioship technicians to install translation matrices and cultural interface systems. The sight should have been impossible, beings of living starlight guiding human workers through the installation of technology that existed at the intersection of biology and physics. Lieutenant Webb, now bearing the title of humanity's first navigator of the deep currents, moved between the groups with easy confidence. The young man who had trembled at sensor readings 6 months ago now spoke the flowing language of space-time navigation as fluently as he spoke English. "The integration is proceeding ahead of schedule," he reported, his eyes carrying depths that hadn't been there before his journey to the Nexus. "The Leviathan Collective has approved our request to establish a permanent human embassy aboard their deep space city ships." Sarah nodded, though part of her still struggled to accept how quickly everything had changed. Earth's governments had initially panicked when the Prometheus reported first contact. There had been talk of military action, of treating the aliens as a threat to be neutralized. That had ended when Webb shared the memories the ancient beings had given him, glimpses of the Devourers, the cosmic predators that would return within a century. Suddenly, humanity's fractured governments had found a unifying purpose, preparing for a war that would determine the fate of the galaxy. "Any word from the construction fleets?" Sarah asked. Webb's expression darkened slightly. "The first generation of biohybrid ships should be ready for testing within 2 years. The Collective's engineers are optimistic about our contribution to the project." That was putting it mildly. Humanity's gift for violent innovation had impressed even the ancient swimmers. While other species had spent millennia perfecting elegant solutions to deep space warfare, humans had immediately begun developing chaotic, unpredictable strategies that even billion-year-old minds couldn't anticipate. The approach wasn't elegant, but it was effective, and in a war against entities that devoured the light of entire star systems, effectiveness mattered more than beauty. Dr. Park approached, his tablet displaying the latest reports from Earth. "Captain, the first group of volunteer crews is ready for deep current training. 2,000 of our best and brightest ready to learn from beings that have sailed between stars since before our species discovered fire." Sarah felt a surge of pride. Despite the fear, despite the overwhelming scope of what they faced, humanity was rising to the challenge. They were adapting, learning, preparing to swim in waters deeper and more dangerous than they'd ever imagined. But it wasn't just humans who were changing. Through the viewport, she could see a mixed fleet of human ships and biovessels conducting joint training exercises. The sight was becoming common. Young species learning from ancient mentors, while those same mentors rediscovered the value of fresh perspectives and chaotic innovation. "Captain," Webb said quietly, "I've been thinking about what the Nexus entities told me, about how most young species either destroy themselves or isolate themselves in fear. We almost did both. But we didn't," Sarah replied. "We chose a third path. Because we had to. Because the alternative was extinction." Webb paused, his enhanced perception allowing him to sense the currents of fate flowing around them. "I wonder if that's always been the test. Not whether a species is wise or peaceful, but whether they can adapt when everything they thought they knew turns out to be wrong." Before Sarah could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. But these weren't the desperate klaxons of 6 months ago. These were the steady, purposeful tones of a ship preparing for departure. Commander Vasquez's voice echoed through the corridors. "All hands, prepare for transition to deep current navigation. Next stop, the Andrian Sector training grounds, where we'll begin advanced cooperative tactics with our collective partners." Sarah felt a familiar thrill as the Prometheus began to shift into the biohybrid navigation mode that Webb and the alien engineers had developed. It wasn't pure human technology anymore, nor was it purely alien. It was something new, a fusion that was greater than the sum of its parts. Through the ship's bio-neural network, she could sense the presence of their Leviathan escort, its ancient, mind touching theirs with something like approval. "You swim well for such young ones," came the familiar mental voice. "The deep currents suit you." As space folded around them and the stars began to stream past in rivers of light, Sarah allowed herself a moment of wonder. 6 months ago, they had been alone in the universe, convinced they were humanity's greatest, explorers venturing into empty space. Now they knew the truth. They weren't explorers. They were students. The galaxy was full of teachers, both ancient and wise, waiting to share knowledge that would help them survive what was coming. But they were also warriors, joining a fight that had raged since before. Earth's son was born. And in that role, their chaotic, violent, innovative nature wasn't a flaw to be overcome. It was humanity's greatest gift to the cosmos. The Devourers were coming. But when they woke from their eons-long slumber, they would find the galaxy changed. They would face not just the ancient powers that had fought them before, but new allies with new ideas and new ways of fighting. They would face humanity, swimming in the deep currents at last, ready to defend the light against the darkness between the stars. The real journey was just beginning, to be continued in the chronicles of the Deep Current Wars.